So I think let's start the webinar. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah.
So good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to the insightful webinar on the role of Uniform Civil Code in shaping inclusive public policy in India. It is an honor to gather here today to discuss one of the most pivotal legal and policy matters shaping the future of governance and inclusivity in India. To help us navigate this dynamic discourse, we are privileged to have a distinguished panel of experts with us today. I'll take the opportunity to introduce our panels. We have Dr. Charu Mathur, who is an accomplished advocate on record with the Supreme Court of India, bringing over 2 decades of expertise in corporate, commercial, civil, criminal, and constitutional law. Through the chambers of Charu Mathur, she has represented prestigious institutions and organizations before the Supreme Court and various high court nationwide, including universities, corporations, and government entities. Beyond litigation, she is a sought-after consultant, legal educator, and expert in insolvency law, corporate agreements, and curriculum development for management institutions. Welcome, Dr. Mathur. We are honored to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we have Dr. Neeti Shikha, who is a distinguished academic and consultant with expertise in corporate law and governance, holding a PhD from National Law University, Jodhpur, and an LLM from University College London. She has served in key academic positions across India and Singapore. She has been associated with institutions such as IMT Ghaziabad, National Law University, and Ford School of Management, alongside visiting roles at IIM Rohtak and IIFT New Delhi. Dr. Shikha also contributes to public policy as an honorary advisor at the Alexis Foundation and leads legal research initiatives at the Center for Civil Society. Additionally, she serves on the board of Gomin Bind HTO, an international think tank specializing in legal and policy advisory. Welcome, Dr. Neeti, to the panel.
Thank you.
Then we have our ISPP alumna, Ms. Shiksha Dhaya, who is a dedicated law professional with 7 years of experience in legal academia, specializing in commercial law such as company, contract, IT, and competition law. Passionate about legal aid and community outreach, she has actively contributed to developmental projects and legal support initiatives at various universities, collaborating with government agencies for legal aid camps. As a recipient of the UNESCO Scholarship on SGD 6, she takes immense pride in empowering girls and women through skill building at the Pukar Foundation and contributing to a regional NGO in Gurugram. With expertise in policy analysis, negotiations, leadership, and stakeholder management, she brings a strong social impact-driven approach to her work. Welcome, Siksha. Thank you for being a part of the panel.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ko. But I'm not a panelist, I'm a moderator.
Yes. So I was just coming to that. I think Shiksha would be the right person to moderate today's session, considering her extensive law background. So, Shiksha, handing over to you.
Thank you, Ko. Thank you so much for the introduction. And it's a privilege to be a part of this enlightening discussion. And such an important topic it is, which is evolving in our society today. And since Dr. Neeti has joined from a different time zone, so before I say anything, I would want Neeti Shikha to please share your views on the topic and like what is your perspective on the foundations and the challenges of implementing Uniform Civil Code in India.
Thank you, Shikha. Having Dr. Charu and you here, I think I'm quite a misfit in the discussion from the legal perspective, because you have navigated through this in practice. So I will just say a few words and then I'll let you both lead the discussion with my views intermittently. The conversation around UCC, it is an issue that sits at the crossroad of law, society, and identity, And it is, I understand it's envisioned in Article 44 of the Constitution that seeks to replace, diverse personal laws with a common code that could govern marriage, divorce, inheritance, and related matter. So the objective is to promote equality and justice, especially for women who have often been disadvantaged under personal laws. We have seen Shah Banu's case and how women have been disadvantaged in certain communities. But one has to be mindful because UCC is not just a legal reform, it's an ideal that must navigate deep through social, religious, and cultural complexities, It is implementation, it raises many questions around, how do we craft a common civil framework that respects India's pluralism? Many people argue that which is threatened in current scenario, but that's a political debate. That's not something which, I'm here to comment about. But the fact that how do we make a code, a common embraced by all, is something we need to think deeper into. And we also need to ensure that there's a legal uniformity that does not translate into cultural erasures, and people should not be threatened through this common civil code. Then how do we balance the rights to religious freedom with the right to equality? I think this is one question that really looms large around UCC, which I'm sure you both, both Dr. Charu Mathur and you would be a better place to discuss. So this conversation must go beyond political rhetoric. It requires sensitivity, inclusivity, and commitment to the core constitutional values that Indian constitution embraces, and challenges not only to unify the laws, but also the way it unifies principles of justice and human dignity. So this is what I feel is at the center of UCC. So now I will leave it to you and Dr. Charu to take the discussion forward. I'm here, and I'm here to learn from both of you with your from your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Neeti, for setting the context and sharing your views on the same. So before we begin the conversation with Dr. Charu, I would just give a basic, why there was a debate. And since UCC has been one of the most debated topic from the perspective of law and policy both. So if we just go back to historical perspective, so this debate over the UCC is not new. And during the colonial era, if we see, British rule introduced uniform legal principles in some areas like criminal laws, commercial laws, but they left personal laws untouched. There was a reason behind it. So when the constitution was framed, the issue was debated, and some leaders pushed for an immediate implementation of UCC, whereas some leaders were not in favor of that, and they wanted to follow a gradual approach for that. So that eventually led to inclusion in the directive principle of state policy. And so therefore we have Article 44 of the Constitution of India, so which actually can be seen from the perspective of kind of establishing a legal framework for personal laws that can ensure uniformity in matters such as marriage, divorce, inheritance, and adoption across the communities, irrespective of religion. And since India is a land of extraordinary diversity, culturally, linguistically, religiously, so our personal laws definitely have reflected this diversity, and there has been a balance. It coexisted. But if we see, there are two groups. One group is advocating for UCC, whereas there is another group which is not in favor of UCC. So the group that advocates for UCC argues that a common civil law would definitely eliminate gender and religious-based discrimination, and it would empower marginalized groups and strengthen the idea of common citizenship. So that's basically the view. And basically, what the idea is to ensure that every individual is governed by the common legal rights and responsibilities, which should align with the ideals of modern and progressive democracy. But if we see, this vision is not without challenges. So therefore, the critics raise concerns about religious freedom, cultural autonomy, and the potential marginalization of minority communities. So therefore, their argument is imposing uniform civil code could undermine the pluralistic fabric of Indian society, as Dr. Neeti Shikha also highlighted. So the question now is that how do we balance this individual rights and which should balance it with the collective cultural identities, and that should ensure the justice and inclusivity that remains the core of the policies in any society. So today, as we continue to evolve socially and legally as the society, the debate over the UCC remains pertinent as ever. And the question is it the right time to implement UCC? And can a UCC be structured in a way that respects diversity while promoting justice and gender equality, as Dr. Neeti also mentioned? And how do we sort of navigate the legal and social complexities that come with such a transformative change? So these are few questions that we'll make an attempt to address with an expertise of senior lawyer with us today. So over to you, Dr. Charu. Again, requesting you to please give your opening remarks from the legal standpoint, from the perspective of challenges and the foundation of UCC. Like, what could be the constitutional challenges and the judicial challenges in implementing Uniform Civil Code, and will these challenges in any way conflict the inclusivity?
Right. Thank you, Siksha. Thank you, Kuhu. So just to begin with, see, UCC is an idea which was germinated long time back, right? It was during the when Warren Hastings was there. At that time, it came into first time, and then Macaulay, while preparing the code, it was there. So if you look at English law, if you look at England, they don't have, and they have a uniform civil code for all the people who are domiciled in UK, right? But if there is any foreigner there, that person is free to profess their own religion. Now, when India was after 1857, even when East India Company was taken by the Crown, at that point of the time also, what was the policy? They followed the Roman laws policy that whatever is the religious foundation of the native, let them follow. So when they try to formalize the law in India, because we didn't had a uniform law to even deal with the things like revenue or like even if there is a criminal law. So they started making various codes and all. But they said that as far as your personal law is concerned, you will be governed by that. At that time, you can understand there were no books. So the courts, they actually hired this Hindu and Muslim priests to guide them that what is their religion that it is called. Now, at that time also, there was a reform as far as Hindu law was concerned. There was practice of sati that was there. So you had Raja Ram Mohan Roy, who advocated for removal of sati, this prohibition on sati, widow remarriage, education for women and all, and it was met with all the challenges. Even during our formation of constitution, during our constituent assembly debates, there was some discussion on UCC, but at that point of a time, during the time we got our independence, there was already fear in the minority because of the partition, right? So immediately nothing was done. And even if you look at the Hindu reforms that were codified, Hindu law, that was in 1955. So almost after a period of 7-8 years. And at that point of a time also, they were met with stiff resistance, right? So when you were codifying that you can get divorced or you have to pay maintenance to a child or wife, and polygamy was available to Hindu men also. So they put a ban on that. So that irked the men very much. So that was still there. And those people who are advocating for UCC, at that point of time, they opposed these reforms under the Hindu law also. Now, UCC, if you look at on paper, it is a brilliant idea that instead of calling it as a uniform civil code, if you call it as laws which are applicable to all the citizens of country. Like, for example, your Domestic Violence Act, right? Domestic violence is wrong to any woman, right? It doesn't matter whether she is Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Parsi, Sikh, or she doesn't believe in any religion. It is a wrong against humanity. So it is a it is a law which should be followed, which should give justice to any women. So that was a good idea. Likewise, under criminal law, there is a provision for maintenance under section 125 of CRPC. It should be available uniformly, as was done by Supreme Court in Shah Bano's case. And unfortunately, it was overturned by the then government. which was a wrong decision, obviously. Thereafter, if you look at, see, whenever we talk about UCC, problem is that there is a certain subtext that is attached to it, right? You are not seeing UCC in the purest of pure sense that it is for a good of humanity, it is for the betterment of women in general, and not just any religious group. But today, when we talk about UCC, there is a certain undertone that tries to show supremacy of one section of society over the other. If that is the purpose, then it is trying to defeat the very purpose of UCC, right? The basic purpose of UCC is that all the parties, whether they are men, women, or child, they must be uniformly governed by whatever is the law of the nation, right? So that is why you have Article 44, as you have rightly said, it is a part of our directive principles of state policy. So this is a goal which we were always looking at. Just to give you one more example, see, there was this decision, I think it was called Seema versus Ashwani Kumar. Before that decision, there was no need to register marriage in all the marriages, right? Very few people used to do, there was a special marriage act if you do under that date. But that judgment made it everybody to compulsorily register their marriage. So it is a good governance, it is a good law, so that you can always get to know that this person is married to this person, and it solves a lot of problems which comes through your way of your inheritance is there, or if there is a family dispute, or if you want to prove your lineage. So it is a good thing that this kind of documentation is being done. So if you remove the kind of subtext in which people are saying that UCC we are going to implement, and if the undertone is to show the dominance, then it loses the very purpose of inclusivity for which it is there, right? So on paper, it is a good idea. And the second point, I think when we will reach there, we will discuss it, whether states, can they unilaterally have UCC, or UCC should be implemented all over the India as a uniform law, as the name itself suggests. Over to you, Shiksha.
Thank you so much, Dr. Charu. You sort of given us the complete timeline of the idea behind inclusivity and the purpose of having UCC, and where are we actually lacking, and what looks good, but it should also fulfill the purpose that it is for which it is drafted. Now, the second question, because you also the balance is what is we require. So if we talk about the fundamental rights versus directive principles, so there is a fundamental right under Article 25, and which actually talks about giving the religious freedom. And whereas Article 40, whereas the DPSP is advocating for UCC under Article 44. So Article 25 also is essentially about inclusion.
Right.
If we look at that. So do you think UCC will be able to maintain that balance while promoting inclusion?
See, I think you have to draw a balance between the two, right? Your cultural thing cannot be such, your culture cannot be such, which is going to suffocate another human being. So if you take the polygamy, for example, if you look at the absolute figures, though the in popular parlance, you will say that it is Muslims who marry and have 4 wives and everything. But if you actually look at the numbers, you will find that across Hindu, Muslim, Christians in and Hindu, Muslim, except for Sikhs, everybody around 1.2 to 1.9% of the population of that particular religious dominant, they have been following polygamy. So it is wrong to say, it is just a political narrative that people give. If they one man marry 4 women and then they have 16 kids, it is not. It is impossible for anybody to mention it. But at the same time, I'm saying that in all religion, under 2% it is for there. Even for Muslims, it is not about 2%, and this is what the government data says for themselves. Now, culture can be different thing. Culture cannot be something as rude as that if a husband died, you have to sit on his pyre and self-immolate yourself, right? Sati was also opposed, right? It was the most inhuman practice that was there. Or if you look at triple talaq, it is just below the dignity of a person, that you खाने में नमक नहीं, okay, talaq, talaq, talaq. What is this nonsense, right? So this cannot be your culture. Culture, you have to balance that. That is why I'm saying that instead of having uniform civil code, you can give it a better name, right? You can call it a law which is neutral law for all, right? I mean, I'm just suggesting one of the name. It can be neutral laws for all, right? So these are the kind of things where you have the patriarchy in the society, where you have misogynistic the thinking of the general population is there. Then how do you curb it, right? How do you make society more inclusive? You cannot say कि ये हमारी परंपरा, प्रतिष्ठा and whatever Saif Ali Khan says in parampara, right? You cannot go on that. That cannot be your parampara. That cannot be your culture. Your culture can be to keep celebrating your festivals in certain manners, following certain religion dictates, that is there. But it can never be to suppress another human being. Even if you look at inheritance, right? So even if you look at Hindu women's inheritance, right? When you're talking about uniform civil code, only after amendment, daughters have a right in their parental property. That too in case of when they are dying without leaving a will, that is in the intestate succession when it is there. So though in Muslim law they have a certain right to property even before the this legislation was there. So if you look at every religion, what I particularly feel is every religion is doing something to suppress women. I may be wrong, I may be right, but this is what I feel. So idea is that you need to have laws which are uniformly applicable, which is there for upliftment of humanity as a whole.
Thank you, Dr. Charu. This is absolute. I would agree on this point that on the name of culture and religion, you cannot really suppress any other human being, and it should, because it is against the humanity. We have to respect that we're all born as human beings, and we all deserve to be respected.
Right.
Yes, from slightly from here, if because you also talked about how do we sort of how are we going to accommodate the marginalized communities here? Whether states should be given, because it is anyways a topic of concurrent list, and whether one law for the whole country, or how should we accommodate the tribal communities and regions with special protections such as Northeast be accommodated within the UCC. Although Uttarakhand is already yeah, they do have, and they have been given this. They have sort of covered that part, marginalized communities. So what's your view on that? What will be the best model?
See, I think as far as scheduled tribes are concerned, they have to be protected, and even in Uttarakhand, they have been exempted. So as far as I believe that there should be neutral laws all over the country, just like you have your Domestic Violence Act. It protects every woman, right? Whether you are a Hindu, Muslim, or a Sikh, or you are mother-in-law, or you are a daughter-in-law, or you are a sister-in-law, if you are a woman, this is a law that is going to protect you. It is there. Now, coming on to the aspect like scheduled tribes only, and I'm not talking about scheduled caste or OBC. Scheduled tribes, they need certain kind of protection to protect their culture. But at the same time, we need to revisit our scheduled tribes also. Whether they are still living in that age which they were in 75 years back when they were there. I agree, like now we have started exploiting Andaman and Nicobar also. But they must be protected if they have a certain culture that is there. And I think their culture is perhaps richer than ours because they are living in the purest form. So I think apart from that, it should be applicable uniformly to everybody.
And from here, if we, you also mentioned about UK, they are they follow UCC, and there are other countries like France, which also follows, Turkey, Indonesia, they have UCC. And so so if we actually, since many countries have already adopted the model of UCC, so what are the best legislative models for drafting UCC in India? Should it be based on existing personal laws or the international best practices, or like a fresh legal framework?
I think it is always a good idea to have a fresh legal views. So today, live-in relationship is quite common, right? And now you see there are people who are coming that even if you are living in with somebody, you must get it registered. Now that loses the very purpose of that. So you need to have a fresh outlook at these things. And gender fluidity is something which is very common today. And perhaps it has gone to another extreme, right? What we call as a woke culture. So you have to balance, and perhaps we need a fresh perspective on everything. So you cannot be Trump like that there are only two genders. I don't recognize even the third gender. Then if you look at the other type of genderization, you will find that people have listed over 26 different types of genders. Right? So even more than the alphabets that we have in English. So fresh perspective is something which is actually required.
So,
Yeah, sorry. So just to add one more thing, there is an ongoing debate. One is regarding the what should be the age of consent, first thing. And second thing, that is regarding the marital rape. Now, how do you define it, and how you are going to come up with that? And even today, Supreme Court has passed one order which they want to know whether a permanent alimony can be given to a Muslim woman. Now, why should a woman suffer only because she belongs to a certain religion, right? Religion is not something that she has chosen, right? This is what she was born into it, and she was saying, okay, you born in this family, so you will be Muslim. You are born in this family, so you will be Hindu. So these are the issues which are there. And just to talk about age of consent, so there is a very tragic case in our case laws. This is about a 10 or 11-year-old girl, Fulmani. She was married to a 26-year-old man, and he ravished her, and she died on the first night of her marriage because she was so brutally raped. So at that point of a time, this was sometime in 1800s, then English did, when they were the rulers, they decided to change the age of consent. What is the age of consent? They raised it to 15 years for having, if it is a legally wedded wife, when it will amount to rape or when it will not amount to rape. But today, when you look at the POSCO law, which is deals with the prevention of this offenders of the Sexual Offenders Act, POSCO. Today, you will find so many false cases are filed against boys that at one point of a time when we were underage, so I had a relationship with this boy, and the entire life of the boy and his family is ruined because somebody after X point of a time says, when I was 16, he did this to me. So you need to have a fresh perspective.
So when we talk about fresh perspective here, because if we see the kind of changes that legislative drafting has taken place in India, if we talk about tech laws, so there is proper consultation process that is happening. So what, like, I just out of curiosity that I want to ask for, because it is also a political topic.
Yeah, it is political. That is what I'm saying, that it is not, I mean, I see it not as a very sincere attempt. I see it as a fresh, okay, we have come down the other religion, right? Even if you look at the other countries, most of the countries, they follow UCC. They have evolved. Even the Muslim countries, they have also evolved, right?
Yeah. Yes. So when we talk about like getting the fresh perspective on this it's a social subject, because it talks about inclusivity, some are against, some are favor. So what, like, how do you think like stakeholder consultation should take place, and how it should take place? Because I somehow am not I don't have the knowledge of this particular part of, like, getting the fresh perspective, including everybody who are the real stakeholders in this particular.
See, one thing that I will say, that as far as your consultation on any legislative draft is there, it is available for every citizen to share their thoughts on that. And there are various platforms that actually help you do that, like Civics is one which does that this is they try to simplify what it is, and you can send your views on that. And in fact, I was reading one of the books. I always thought that Constituent Assembly debates, it was made in that ivory tower kind of a thing. But if you actually look, you will find there were not one or two, but thousands and thousands of postcards were there, which were meticulously examined and say that what the citizen was wants. So if they want to do it as a sincere attempt, then today we have got much more technology is available at our disposal, where if you want to have the citizen heard, right, or if citizen wants their voice to be heard, they have the means to send it. They can send their response, and almost every paper, almost every bill before it is presented, its draft bill is available for comment. It is available on the websites of your Lok Sabha, also Rajya Sabha. Then if you look at PRS legislators, they are doing great work. It is available there. Now you have got it in the vernacular language also, in English and Hindi also it is present. So citizen has to actually, and there I think where we come into place, ISSP, as a policy where you can make people to understand that it is, if you want to be governed, how you want to be governed, you can decide that, right? You have to be part of policy formulation, right? How the policies are to be made, you can do that. You have the right to participate, but you have to exercise your right. So
Yes.
today, everything you get, the email address is there. You have to just send an email, not even a kharcha of putting the postage stamp.
I deliberately brought this into discussion because me being a scholar of ISPP and the kind of motivation that scholars have is to be a part of the policy making and policy implementation and the changes that would impact the society at large. So since scholars are also a part of the webinar today, as you understood, like this is the role that we have to play, active role in policy formation. So this is how we can actually be involved in the policy making. So that's the real stakeholder consultation.
Yeah, Shika, if I may just add a couple of things here. One thing that ISPP focuses on is teaching behavioral economics and behavioral approach to policy making, which I think can be very useful if the scholars work and if the policymakers work, because now framing has become very important. Now, because it has taken a very strong political discourse, we are not looking at the bright side of UCC and only looking at the downsides or seeing in a political framing. So maybe looking at from the more equality perspective, and as Dr. Mathur said, maybe not calling it a uniform civil code which has a baggage of its past, but maybe giving a new nomenclature can be very useful.
Thank you, Dr. Nite. From here, I would move the discussion towards the business and the business part of it, how it impacts the economy. As we have like Dr. Mathur with us, who has extensively practiced in this area, and also Dr. Niti Shika. So would be great to hear their views. So since implementation of UCC is going to impact the corporate and business laws, particularly in areas like inheritance, property rights, and succession planning. So what are your views on how will it increase the corporate diversity and inclusion? Or like, am I right in saying that it's going to increase the corporate diversity?
This is for me?
Yeah, any one of you.
Yeah, Niti will go first.
See, it's a very good question, Shika, because I never thought from that perspective as to how it will impact the corporations and the corporate diversity. But I think there's something that we have to mull over. So I'm not sure if diversity in terms of demographic constitution would really affect business, but maybe some for employees, some schemes like, if it has to do with maternity or marriage issues, then maybe some aspect would be there. Now, having said that, what we do in the UK here, we very strongly believe in multicultural. Not to say that UCC will take over, but because there's a multicultural, there's a deliberate effort from the institutions and organizations to be inclusive. So I'm just thinking that what would be the long-term vision of inclusiveness? Because as I told you, framing really matters in policy. When you say uniformly, that harmonization, Are you trying to say you're trying to do away with inclusivity? So what will be the approach to inclusivity and diversity is something that corporates will have to look into. So that's just my, some quick thoughts that I get from the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Mathur.
Thank you. So as far as your corporate diversity and inclusivity is concerned, I think UCC will play a role there also, right? Because when you have a uniform kind of a law, and every company, it has to go, like their promoter family, they have to go through succession planning. So when you have a uniform kind of a thing, so it will be actually very helpful. So you know that if there are two sons and two daughters, how the empire or how the verticals will be formulated. Likewise, you need to evolve with time. Like today only, I was reading about this Mr. Ratan Tata's will, which is all over the places, and he has come out with something called that you cannot question the will, right? They have used one particular term for that, and that itself is a very good thing, right? It is something which is not available under our laws, but he has brought it. So if there is any benefactor who is the part of the who is part of this thing, the benefactor of the who is benefited from the will, then he cannot access it. It is called no context clause, right? So you cannot contest the will. So that is something which is not available. So, but it is a good practice. So if there is something which is provided in the will, you don't go on keep on fighting the will. Like suppose imagine there is a uniform succession law for all the religions, right? So you will not have, and there are so many corporate battles which are actually fought on the will. So one brother will challenge the will, another, and we have seen that in the case of Raymond also, right? There were two brothers, and father favored one. Then we know what happened next. So I think even in streamlining as we go, it is a good part of our corporate governance that we have at least neutral laws which should govern.
Absolutely. Because I was talking to a friend of mine, because you're giving these examples of big corporates, and because just a small example from Gurugram, a friend of mine. So they are part of Hindu HUF, like it's a succession of the property through, and the part of, and it was given to a builder to build flats on that. But then again, the shares are not defined. It is so difficult, and there is a battle which is still, there's a fight which is still happening. So that's where I believe that corporates also will have certain sort of relief if there is uniformity with respect to the property as well. And also there will be a freedom to take a decision.
Absolutely.
That it's going to be there with the woman, with the daughter of the family.
So like when HUF, it actually became a problem when they said that a woman can be a karta of HUF. So it actually opened a Pandora box as to how to divide the shares.
Yeah, so that's how I think this can also solve a lot of issues related to the property and investment from the corporate side, and including more. It's going to be an inclusive step. This is a small take from my side. And now moving from here, Jan Vishwas Bill. The focus of Jan Vishwas Bill is basically to promote the ease of doing business. And there are certain provisions which decriminalize, the idea is to decriminalize various provisions across different acts to promote ease of doing business. So that's the idea of Jan Vishwas Bill. So however, if we take an example of Uttarakhand UCC, we see certain provisions which are which have been criminalized. Though I am against triple talaq, but just taking an example here, that's criminalized. So in light of these developments, how necessary is criminalization for achieving social inclusion? And can it be seen as there's a necessary legal evil, or should we have this criminalization in the UCC, or we should have some other alternative way?
See, I know where this debate is going on, because if you look on the practicality of the thing, so if you send a husband to jail, after he pronounced triple talaq, there is very little chances that the couple will reconcile, right? But deterrent is sometimes very necessary just to set examples, right? If you don't give the example, perhaps people will not take it very seriously that, okay, this is a practice which has been abolished. So maybe at least for some time you might.
Okay. Okay. Understood. I think I have sort of like, tried to cover the basic idea behind like following the balance approach, and Dr. Mathur was like, kind enough to cover all the aspects right from the history to the complete timeline, what should be the purpose, what exactly the inclusivity means, and how we can achieve it, what kind of model we can adopt, and then how it is going to impact the corporate inclusivity also. Who, if we can have questions from the audience, or if you have any question.
Yes. So I think let's take the questions from the audience first.
Sure. Did we get a
Yes.
question in the question box?
Yes. So we have Piyush who has raised 2 questions to us. So the first question goes as we know, personal laws are listed in the concurrent lists. Will implementing UCC make it a potential subject for conflict in center-state relations?
Yeah. So this is what we're talking about, that when we are talking about UCC, probably we should have, as the name suggests, that it should be uniform all across the places. But if you look at Schedule 7 list, so whether it is marriage, divorce, and all those, they come actually as a part of the concurrent list. So ideally, we should have a uniform, neutral laws if at all we are going for UCC. This piecemeal legislation by various states, according to me, is not going to do justice to any of the parties.
Siksha, do you have any thoughts on the same?
I agree with Dr. Mathur. We did cover this part.
Yeah. And the second question is, instead of an abrupt shift to a UCC, amending discriminatory provisions in personal law would reduce resistance and align these laws with constitutional values.
So I think this is a good idea, but again, this will be a piecemeal thing. What do you consider as bad? Not necessarily other person will consider it as bad. So if I say triple talaq is bad, or if I say sati is bad, then you will say, fine, this is my practice. This is what my forefathers have been observing. So this is a good practice for me. So if you want to go for something, I believe go full throttle. No halfway things.
It's any-
Thank you.
it's
Yeah,
a
sorry.
very- Yeah, it's a very subjective thing. Like what may be right for me may not be right for you. So that's how it's going to create a lot of confusions only, and it's not going to solve the purpose. And we are such a big nation. If we have to govern uniformly, so we have to govern uniformly.
I think I'll agree to that. And moving on, we have one question from Webhub who says, shouldn't we have different family laws for rural areas and urban areas in light of the present status of urban population who are avoiding marriage?
No, why do you think that? I think rural population is far more progressive than the city folks, right?
True. So these were the questions that I think the audience posed. I am not a law graduate, but yes, today's webinar was very actually educative for me as well. So I learned a few things. It was a very interesting discussion. And I would really thank Dr. Mathur for being a part of the panel, Dr. Neeti also for being present here today, and Siksha for being a wonderful moderator. Any closing thoughts, Dr. Mathur?
I think it is an idea whose time has come, provided you remove the undertones, you take into consideration the realities of the modern life, right? Living is something that exists. We always consider marriage as pious obligation under Hindu law, but accept it to go for prenuptials because you do have vast amount of money that today's generation is earning, right? So if you can sort it out, for Hindus, it was never a contractual thing. It is a pious obligation, saat janmo ka sath kind of a thing. But you have to look at the practicalities of the things, how the world is moving, get a fresh perspective and do it with open mind, not with a prejudice or not with an idea to thumb down another community. If it is that is the idea, go for it.
Thank you, Dr. Mathur. Dr. Neeti, any closing thoughts?
Just a few thoughts, Kuhu.
Yeah.
This is a question that this is an issue that has to be resolved, because I remember when the public petition for triple talaq started, one of my friend now who works with the UN, and she was one of the victims of triple talaq despite being very educated, and she, as a Muslim woman, came at the forefront to start this conversation. So I think there are people within the communities who want to banish the tradition which is not which is cruel to women as a group of society. Now, having said that, I feel that when you talk about uniform civil code, it is important to have a uniform law, but one has to be mindful that uniformity should not be imposed, but should be a choice for people. In a sense that people should be able to opt in and opt out, something what like Shah Banu's case had done. And at the same time, there should be some mechanism where the judiciary could actually take recourse to uniform civil code in event the personal laws are becoming a problem in protecting dignity and rights of individuals. Now, I'm saying this because I'm not sure that having a UCC will really take away the personal laws. There'll have to be some ambit within which the personal laws prevail. Look at the private and national law. There's a whole branch of law, and that recognizes within Europe personal, rights and individual rights and religious practices for individuals. Now, practices which are not good for people should be done away with, but then who decides that? So I'm a little divided on this. I think we need to really navigate it very carefully. We need to have a uniformity that allows the justice, but how do we approach it? Should we have a scaffolded way where you bring a law where people have an option to opt in, and later, the society bites or inorganically embraces it? Or should you have a law which says, from 2026, dawn of 2026, there's no personal laws, and now Uniform Civil Code takes primacy. So I'm not sure about it. So I'm quite divided, but I'm sure with great scholars and ISPP producers, they're gonna take this discussion forward in a meaningful way. So that's my 2 cents on this. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Dr. Neeti. And I think, as you mentioned, ISPP scholars, so I'll just move to Siksha, who's an ISPP alumni. Siksha, what are your closing thoughts on the same?
Yeah, because there are complexities involved in this topic and there are sensitivities involved in this particular area. So definitely it's going to be a great move if India is successful in taking it. But maybe what is doable, what is achievable. And as a policy scholar and as a policy practitioner, rather than sort of talking like an activist, I would just like to give my closing remark by saying that we can adopt a phased approach. We can see that how it actually is, what is the acceptability of it, and maybe gradually. Like, I'm not saying exactly like Dr. Neeti also said that she's not sure whether it should start like immediately or what should be the model, while whether opt-in, opt-out. I don't think so opt-in, opt-out would work in this case, but maybe a phased manner approach can be started rather than having immediately uniformly applicable. But as Dr. Mathur also stressed upon it throughout 1 hour, that the purpose should be very clear, objective should be very clear, that should not be defeated at any cost, and it is a political agenda, but it should also consider the purpose and the objective, and that should not be defeated, because it is actually something which is going to uplift the marginalized communities in a great manner. So that kind of respect, that kind of consideration should be there while having this law. Thank you for
Thank you.
having
Yeah. Thank you, Siksha. Thank you, Dr. Mathur. Thank you, Dr. Neeti. I think today's discussion would give a food for thought to a lot of our attendees who have attended this session, including me. So lastly, I just want to thank you for being a part of the panel and being there today for the webinar. And with that note, I'll bid goodbye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. Dr. Mathur, you wanted to say something?
Oh, just a thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank
you.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Mathur. It was, I learned a lot from you. I'm too young to question any, to have, to be asking any questions from you, but it was pleasure interacting with you. And as usual, Dr. Neeti, it was pleasure talking to you after a long time.
Okay, with that note, I'm just ending the webinar. Good night, everyone. Thank you for being a part of the webinar.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.